Recently, VentureBeat published a video where games journalist Dean Takahashi played roughly 26 minutes of the new indie game Cuphead. The video blew up due to a tweet from Ian Miles Chong where he calls out the playthrough as painful to watch. The tweet included 2 minutes and 20 seconds of the playthrough, specifically the very first thing we see in the playthrough, Dean failing to get through the second jump of the tutorial. The video, which you can see in the background here, is just as painful as Ian said it was. Immediately, everyone took to mocking the video and Dean for his complete lack of ability. And almost just as immediately, we saw articles popping up about how games journalists don't have to be good at video games in order to write about them. While many people mock this as a weak response and immediately dismissed it, I thought it might be good to entertain their counterpoint for once. So, watch as I try to answer the age-old question, should games journalists be good at games? I'd first like to say that this video won't really have much on the screen other than me playing Sonic Mania. So put this on in the background while you do something else, or put your phone in your pocket. You don't have to look at the screen. If there's anything important, I'll tell you to look. So, the question at hand. Should games journalists be good at games? Or rather, should games journalists be expected to be good at games? This is something many games journalists say is an unfair expectation, some going as far to say it is an elitist and close-minded thing of gamers to say. I think if we're going to disagree with this, we need to entertain it. To start, I think we should compare what we expect from other journalists and reviewers to explain why we expect what we do from games journalists. I think it's fair to compare games journalists with film and music journalists. I think this is a fair comparison to draw because we're discussing creative mediums. Games, film, and music are all narrative, creative mediums. When I think of a film or music journalist, there are a few things I expect from them. 1, I expect knowledge of the medium. 2, I expect them to be able to use their knowledge to craft informed opinions on the piece they're discussing. That's really kind of it. I know that sounds kind of basic, but it really is all there is. And I have that same expectation for games journalists. I expect them to know what they're talking about, and I expect them to be able to articulate that within their reviews. The difference with game journalists really comes within the fact that a level of skill and competency is required to interact with the medium. With film and music, in order to interact with the medium, you need to just be able to sit and listen or watch for the length of the piece you're reviewing. With games, you need to be able to play the game. And because it's a game, skill is necessary. This is, of course, not to say that there is no skill in film or music review. It's just a different kind of skill. The skill there really takes the form of being able to use your knowledge and apply that to your analysis. Someone like Adam from Your Movie Sucks is incredibly skilled at taking his knowledge on the filmmaking process and apply that to his film reviewing. Someone like Anthony Fantano from The Needle Drop is able to use his incredible knowledge of genre production and music history and apply that to his listening experience. There's a huge amount of skill that goes into doing this and then articulating it. Games journalists have to do this on top of having the skill to play that game. So, the question is, why do we expect them to have that skill? And that answer is simply because it's necessary to be able to accurately write about the game. If you can't play the game, I don't trust your opinion on the game. I don't think it's informed. I know this sounds obvious, but I really think this needs to be made clear. If you can't play the game due to your own lack of skill, your experience and opinion of the game will be altered and influenced because of this. Let me use an example to make this clear. Sonic Mania just came out. Well, a couple weeks now ago, but I wrote the script a while back. Sonic Mania just came out. Let's say I was a journalist and I was told to review it. Let's say I never played platformers and I'm not good at them. I boot up Sonic Mania, I can't beat Green Hill Zone. It's either I find the traps too hard to avoid or I just find the boss fights too tricky, whatever it is. The point is, I can't beat it. My opinion of the game might now be that the game is unrealistically difficult. Maybe I don't realize how bad I am. I give the game a 4 out of 10 because I find that it's just cruel with how hard it is. The problem here is, I'm not informed. I don't really know what I'm talking about because I can't recognize that the game isn't hard, I'm just bad. On top of that, I can't accurately review any other part of the game because I can't make it that far. Now, someone who sees my review but doesn't realize I have a lack of experience might avoid the game because they're expecting it to be unfairly hard. My unexperienced opinion and my ill-informed opinion has influenced others under false pretenses. Now, that might sound ridiculous to some, but this is a real effect. If you don't buy it, let me use an example with music. My girlfriend hates trap music. The instrumentation gives her a headache, and she can't even sit through a single trap song. If she wrote a review of a trap album, I wouldn't listen to what she had to say at all. I know that she's unable to give an accurate judgment on the album within the context of other music in the genre, because to her, all of it sounds like a trash fire. Someone who doesn't know her predisposition, though, might actually listen to her opinion and think that the album is particularly bad and avoid it. When you approach a piece of media without the right knowledge, context, experience, or skill required to accurately interact with it, your opinion is less valuable than someone who is more knowledgeable or skilled in that regard. Let's bring it back to the Cuphead video and explain why people had such a large reaction. When you watch the video, there are 2 reactions to have. 1. Wow, this guy is terrible at this game. 2. Wow, this game is terribly hard. This is really important to understand. Now, Cuphead, from what I've heard, is not meant to be an easy game. It's a tough-as-nails shoot-'em-up side-scroller. So you might think there's some credence to the idea that Dean Takahashi was just struggling because it's a tough game. But seriously, people, it was the goddamn tutorial he couldn't make it through. Not even just that, it was the first thing in the tutorial. Basic movement. And as my girlfriend pointed out, there is text and arrows on the screen that tell you exactly what to do. This isn't a case of hard as hell game or broken controls. This is literally someone struggling to read instruction and then put them on a controller. If doing that is so hard for them that it takes them roughly 2 minutes to jump and then dash while in jump, then I can't trust anything they have to say about the game. Look, this isn't even a hyperbole here. We're discussing an inability to execute basic platformer mechanics. Chaining abilities such as jump and dash is the kind of thing expected from a basic platformer. Anyone with even slight familiarity with platformers will be expecting that. They are completely and totally not in a position to discuss the game formally if they don't know this. Yes, they need to be knowledgeable about the game to discuss the game. Yes, they need to be able to play the game to discuss the game. Now, this is where I think the journalist reaction of saying, why do we need to be good, is totally and completely fallacious. Let's face it here. The issue isn't that Dean is bad at the game. The issue is Dean doesn't have the basic entry-level skill to handle even the tutorial of the game. This is separate from good or bad. This is a lack of basic understanding. This is like a film reviewer not knowing what framing or dialogue is. This is like a music reviewer not being able to tell the difference between guitar and bass. I mean, Jesus Christ, he should be able to complete the tutorial. It's the goddamn tutorial. But some games journalists will still push that you don't need to be good. They love to point to games like Dark Souls and say that it shouldn't be expected of them to be able to be masters of Dark Souls in order to write about games. And they're kind of right. But that's only because something like Dark Souls is a special case. Dark Souls is specifically designed so people who are good at video games even struggle with it. Some people find that game impossible, and that's fair. But not every game is Dark Souls. Cuphead is not Dark Souls. This is why people find it so pathetic when games journalists compare everything to Dark Souls. Crash Bandicoot is not the Dark Souls of platformers. You just suck at platformers. For the average game, your average racer, RPG, platformer, shooter, whatever, you need to be good at them to accurately discuss them. I mean, seriously, this is your job. If you're a games journalist and all you do is play games, your job is to be good at games. If you're not, maybe the job isn't for you. We're not asking for perfection or total expertise on every game, but you need to be good. Games are also a mass market media product. Your average game is designed for everyone to play them as a means to maximize the audience. It doesn't take that much skill to be good at video games, especially if you play them for work. But what if you want to write about games, but you're not good at them? Well, I think there are still options, but it's harder. I'm a good example of this, actually. I'm terrible at games. I'm a casual player at best, but I love to analyze and discuss them. So I compensate for my lack of skill with trying to become as knowledgeable of the game and the context as I can. Let me use a concrete example. A year ago, I did a presentation on Hideo Kojima's PT. Now, I never played PT, and I probably never will. But I really wanted to do a presentation on the masterful execution of horror in that game. So I watched many playthroughs, paying attention and taking notes of where people got scared, what scared them, and how they felt throughout the game. I also read and watched every story analysis video out there. I read into the production and history around the game. I did everything I could because I couldn't play the game. I went as far to reconstruct the map using blueprinting software so I could fully understand the layout of the game. And for my analysis within the presentation, I brought up other pieces of horror and also the history and context of surrealism and surrealism in horror. Of course, I will never say I know what it's like to play the game. I can never write a review on it or say anything about my personal experience or truly how good it is, but I am able to write an analytical piece on it. I'm able to interact intellectually with the media separate from reviewing it or giving an opinion. If you want to write for games but aren't good at them or can't review them, you can do analysis work. There are outlets, but like I've shown, you really need to prove your familiarity and knowledge of the game to do this. It's much harder advice to follow through on than what critics of games journalists say. Get good. This is kind of rambly and a bit off track, so I'll sum it up here. If you're a games journalist, you need to be good at games. If you're not, but you want to write about games, then you need to know everything about a game to write about it. Seriously, just get good. It's not that hard. It's not that time consuming. And at the end of the day, yes, it is your responsibility. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I really truly thank you. In the comments below, tell me if you agree, disagree, anything I missed, anything I got wrong, whatever you want. If you want, please like the video, and if you can, send this to every games journalist you can. I'd love to hear what they have to say. This has been Syntheside, wishing you a good day and good games.